Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to Ramacro. It's time for another voicemail. Today's voicemail is from Kelly. Let's listen to what Kelly has to say.
Hey Lloyd, I'll be using the name Kelly just to keep my identity hidden. Um, 2 nights ago, I opened up to my father about my situation. Um, and my situation is this: my wife and I are no longer attending meetings, and we are planning to leave the witnesses behind, um, fading, to be more specific. And I gave my reasons as to why, but a little bit of background is that I woke up first at the beginning of the year, and how I woke up was pretty interesting because um, I had no idea how to explain to someone about 1914 and the 2,520 years teaching that we're taught at meetings. So I did my digging, I did my studying, using only JW material, but I still wasn't getting my answer, and it it just was bothering me about that. I just wasn't getting the origins of the teaching. And so I decided to go to the public library and I read books that talked about the Second Great Awakening. Um, Thanks to somebody who, is knowledgeable of that era, they told me what specific books to read, what scholarly books to read. I read God's Strange Work by David Rowe and The Disappointed by Ronald Numbers. And both of these books talked about a figure I had no idea about, William Miller, and his movement um, his movement during that time, during the late 18th century. And pretty much that started to bring doubts, bring this idea that 1914 is all made up by just plugging in numbers, some pseudoscience. And I showed it to my wife, and she first denied it, but when she really saw the evidence and read the books, she also concluded the same, that this is a man-made organization influenced by William Miller's teachings. So now going back to my father, I opened up to him and I told him everything I just told you right now. And he pretty much argued that I am an apostate. As of now, I am currently an apostate with an apostate mind and an apostate heart, and that he will no longer be talking to me. And he literally acts that I am officially dead. And his argument was that reading history and reading historical books that aren't approved by the witnesses is a form of apostasy that could get me disfellowship. I haven't given any letter to any elder about me, disassociating. What I want to do is fade away, because I know how how evil it is to be shunned, and how dangerous it could be to somebody's emotional well-being and also mental well-being. So that's why we are choosing to fade. But again, my question to you is Lloyd, now that my father is really doing this to me and closing me off, how can I convince my father that I'm not a bad person, and how can I rebuild this bridge again, this relationship again? Because every time we talk, he begins to tell me that I'm wrong, and that until I change my mind and my heart, we can talk. Please let me know if you have any suggestions on how I can rebuild this relationship, or at least have a conversation with him again. Thanks, Lloyd.
Well, thank you for leaving that message. My heart goes out to you. You have my deepest condolences isn't really the word, is it? It's sympathies and solidarity for the situation that you are in. I don't think you can rebuild. I'm just going to say it at the outset. I think that if your father is of the mind where he can tell his son, you are officially dead, if he can use words similar to that. And by the way, when you are a parent, you don't even joke about that. It's so unthinkable that you outlive your children that when your kids are like joking, saying, "Oh, I'm dead," something kind of turns inside you. You're like, that's not even remotely funny. You don't say anything, whether it's joking or just speaking flippantly. You never joke about that or say flippant things along those lines when you are a parent. And the fact that he could say that to you, "You are officially dead," indicates to me that we're talking about an individual, your father, who, well, the cult thinking has overridden his humanity. This is not looking good if we're speculating as to whether this is an individual with whom you can have a relationship as a faded or ex-Jehovah's Witness. It's just not looking good. And, if you needed like an outside opinion or an outside perspective on that, I'm happy to give it. Never say never, I guess. You never know whether your dad might at some point wake up, but it's not looking likely, and it's a journey he needs to take in his own time. But if he's suggesting that even just reading books, even if they're not by ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, just reading books that teach you about religious history or the history of the Bible or whatever is a form of apostasy. Well, so what he's doing there is he's going above and beyond what the organization says. So even the organization, they may imply it, but even the organization hasn't outright said that it's a form of apostasy to do research into secular sources and what secular historians and experts and scholars have to say. They don't say it's a form of apostasy. So for your dad to be going above and beyond in finding reasons to demonize you, coming up with things that even his religion isn't saying, again, I'm sorry, I don't know how you turn that situation round. I think it's a bitter case of shutting the barn door after the horse has bolted, I'm afraid. Because typically what you would do when you execute a fade is you would identify who in your life you want to maintain relationships with and the extent to which they would be bothered by your true feelings about the religion. And you would make sure that those people who would be bothered know as little as possible. Well, with all due respect, you've just gone barreling through and put all your cards on the table with your dad, and he is reacting the way you could have predicted, probably. That's why when I'm giving advice to people who are embarking on a fade and they're asking for tips on how to navigate their way out of Jehovah's Witnesses, that's one of the pieces of advice I give, is to be very, very guarded with what information you divulge to believing friends and family, and be mindful of the fact that they may turn you in. I hope that you're able to fade. I hope that sheer pragmatism is going to stop your father from reporting you to the elders or getting you in any kind of trouble. Whether that involves moving physically to a different part of the country, or I don't know. I'm sure you have all that figured out. But I have to say, it's not looking great in terms of the viability of you having a meaningful relationship with a father who has said that you are officially dead, and who has said that even reading from secular sources about history is a form of apostasy. I don't see it, unfortunately. And I would just repeat what I have to say in many of these voicemails. If this situation is unbearable, or the situation that I've spelled out of him not reconciling is unbearable for you, and you've already mentioned mental health and how shunning, you could see that having a very negative impact on your mental health. Anything where your emotions are getting in the way of your quality of life, where you're unable to function due to feelings of loss, anxiety, sadness, you need to see a professional. I'm not a professional. I'm some guy on YouTube. So please do consider, both you and your wife, finding some kind of therapist or counsellor who can just help brace you for the storm of negativity that comes when you distance yourself from a group like Jehovah's Witnesses. And it seems you've already had a major gust of that storm in the form of some of the things that your father has said to you. If you feel, how can I put it? If you feel dependent on a relationship with a man who feels that way, you might need some help there in just kind of readjusting or recalibrating your emotional dependency, so that you no longer need to have his approval, or you no longer need to have a meaningful relationship. You can function without it, because it sounds as though this man has only conditional love for you. If he's saying, I'll only have a relationship with you if you have a study or you start believing again, sorry, that's not how it works. So I hope some or all of this has been helpful, and I'm glad that you've called in with this message, because even though it's very similar to other messages that I receive, and I've probably repeated things that I've said in other voicemail videos, I do think it's worthwhile reminding the viewers that this is common, that this happens all the time. Maybe it's helpful for you yourself to know that this is a common thing, that you are not alone. You know, we need to hear stories like these so that, number one, people can be warned away from this organization and the mindset it gives people, the terrible judgmental black and white mindset that people get when they're absorbed in this group. And number two, it's hopefully giving other people who are in a similar situation a bit of comfort, knowing that they're not alone, and hopefully some ideas as to how to deal with things. The main thing being, obviously, seek out professional help with your mental health. But that's pretty much all I have to say on this. I hope you found this helpful. Don't forget that if you want to leave a message, the thing to do is go to speakpipe.com/Cedars, remembering to indicate clearly if you don't want me to mention or include your message on my channel. But that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for watching.